Can I survive a day at Epic Universe on no sleep is a question that I am anxiously awaiting the answer to. So I'm doing this challenge not because I want to, but because of circumstance. I've been put into a spot to where I've gotten an opportunity to go to Epic Universe, but the only way I'm able to go is by hitting a 5 a.m. flight. So as you can see from the area behind me, I am in a hotel. So I do plan to try to get some shut-eye, but considering what time it is now and the fact that I'm not like an early sleeper, I bet I'll probably only get 2 to 3 hours of sleep, which is significantly less than what I normally get. So I assume that I'm going to be extremely exhausted for my day of theme parking tomorrow. I thought it would be fun to make this video to kind of document what happens to me, because I want to go to this park even if I'm exhausted, and I've never been. I didn't think I would get to go this year, so this chance was kind of unpassable, even with the threat of being totally just wiped out. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm gonna try to sleep as much as I can. I'll check back in with you guys tomorrow. What's up? This is actually quite a bit later than I was expecting to talk to you guys again. It's been about 2 weeks since I went to Epic Universe. Needless to say, I have a lot of things to share with you guys, and I hope that you are excited to kind of see the journey, the exhaustive journey that I went on, and I'm excited to share it with you. One final thing I'd like to go over right before we get into it is that I didn't capture nearly enough B-roll footage. You have to understand, I was on a very tight schedule and I was very tired, so please cut me some slack. But regardless, I'm going to try to use as much online B-roll footage that I can find, and I will try my absolute best to credit them in the description below. But without further ado, let's get started with my journey. So the night before my flight, I was able to get about 2.5 hours of sleep, which is actually within the predicted time that I kind of thought I would get. So I got to the airport around 3:30 a.m. and boarded my plane on time at 4:20 a.m. So I landed in Orlando just before 8 a.m., which was a huge weight off my shoulders. See, if my plane had been delayed even just a couple of hours, my day at Epic would have been way more stressful. Also, I feel I should mention I got no sleep on the plane or at the airport. Despite my lack of sleep, I was actually feeling pretty decent by the time I landed in Orlando. Once at the airport, I got an Uber and headed straight to the hotel to drop off my things. I then hopped on a Universal bus and went straight to Epic. I got to the park just after 9 a.m. I was so excited at this point that lack of sleep was not on my mind at all. I've never been more excited to go to a theme park, so I was on the edge of my seat to see if it would actually live up to the hype. Once inside, I headed straight for Battle at the Ministry. I heard it was one of the best rides at the park and always sported a long wait time, so I figured I should try to get it out of the way first. I feel I should also mention that I avoided all spoilers for this park going in, so everything I saw was a surprise. If you haven't been to Epic Universe, but still plan to go, I suggest just listening to the audio and not watching the video to avoid spoilers. Going in blind is definitely the way to go. First of all, the Harry Potter area in Epic Universe is stunning. I wanted to take my time and soak it in, but I had to push forward to get in line for the ride. I got in line for Battle at the Ministry, and holy cow, this queue is insane. I'm a sucker for anything that is thoughtfully themed, and this queue had me just exploding with joy. Little did I know, I was about to be met by my first big disappointment. After waiting in line for about an hour and a half, the ride went down. The most frustrating part was that I was in the last section of the queue, just outside of the loading zone. Apparently, this ride has so much stuff going on, and if even one thing isn't working properly, it stalls the entire operation. I ended up waiting another 40 minutes or so before leaving without having ridden the ride. This really worried me because now over 2 hours of my day are gone and I still hadn't ridden anything. Would I be able to get to every ride at this rate? Not to mention, my lack of sleep definitely made me less patient than normal. I was upset, but not defeated, so I pressed on. I then went to Stardust Racers, as it was sitting at a low wait time since I had gotten there. Since I was alone, I took the single rider line and walked onto the ride. The coaster is phenomenal. So good, in fact, that I looped it twice since getting on it through the single rider line had no wait. I love roller coasters, and this is easily one of the best ones I have ever ridden. After leaving Stardust, I felt amped with adrenaline and was ready to conquer the day. Also, did I mention how beautiful Celestial Park is? Celestial Park is the main hub for the park that connects all the worlds together, and it stands alone as its own very interesting world to explore. I realized how in need of energy I would be after walking to all these worlds, so I stopped by Starbucks quickly. Also, the Starbucks was themed and it was pretty cool. Coffee in hand, I went to the Isle of Berk from How to Train Your Dragon. I've been a fan of those movies since I was a kid, so seeing the world brought to life like this was insane. They thought of so many little details that just make it eye candy to look at. I went back and rode Hiccups wing gliders, which took about 30 minutes to get on, despite a 90-minute posted wait time, and it was awesome. It's like a slightly less intense version of Hagrid's in Islands of Adventure, but almost every bit as fun. This was definitely the sleeper hit of the park for me, as I had almost no expectations going in. It's a very fun and well-themed coaster for families that anyone will enjoy. Also, please note what I mentioned earlier. For some reason, this ride's wait time is always way longer than what you actually wait, just from my experience and the experience of others that I've talked to. I then skipped over and hopped on Dragon Racers Rally. It was pretty fun, but not worth the 40 minutes I waited for it. It's like a physics experiment became a ride, and I promise you it is more fun than it looks. Just maybe wait for it to dip below 30 minutes. While in the queue, I got extremely hungry and decided I would find something to eat after the ride. I went and got one of those mac and cheese cones near where the ride was, and it was way better than it looks. It was super tasty. Now with some food in my system, I went over to Dark Universe. Ooh. This area is also really cool. Everything is spooky, but not too scary for the kiddos. It's like they made a permanent, family-friendly scare zone from Halloween Horror Nights. I went and rode Monsters Unchained, and it was really impressive. I used the single rider line for this one too, and it was a walk-on. The only downside is that I didn't really get to walk through the queue, which looked awesome by the way, and I think I missed a pre-show. But regardless, the ride was still super fun, and even without the pre-show, the story was super easy to follow. The animatronics in this ride were breathtaking, some of the best that I have ever seen. This ride wasn't really scary though. I remember hearing during development that this ride was supposed to be really intense and scary, but I guess somewhere along the way, they decided to scale it back, or maybe that rumor never really had any real weight to it. I was going to hop over to Curse of the Werewolf, but my expectations for that ride were low and the wait time was over an hour, so I decided to go ahead and go over to Nintendo World. As a video game nerd, seeing Nintendo World in person is the single most insane experience I have ever had at a theme park. I am not a crier or an emotional person, but if you teared up coming into this place for the first time, I wouldn't blame you. I know not everyone will feel this strongly about it, but this has to be my most favorite themed area in Epic. I went straight back and rode Mario Kart. Mario Kart was fun. I think it gets a lot of unnecessary hate. It's like an augmented reality experience. There are practical effects, but there's also like a kind of gameplay aspect to it. I think overall it lived up to my expectations at least. I thought it was fun. It's not like some insanely intense ride though, so anyone can do it. Just kind of have that in mind going into it, and I think that you'll have a better experience than what you see people talking about online. Also, and I know this is probably getting exhausting, but the queue for this ride is incredible. If you are a Mario Nintendo fan at all, you have got to see this queue. It is just so insane to see in person. Really, on video does not do it much justice. You have got to see this thing in person. That kind of goes for all of Nintendo World, but especially this queue. Also, you might have noticed I haven't really talked about being tired yet. I've mostly just been talking about my experience at the park. That's because, honestly, jumping between all of these worlds had me so excited and so hyped that I didn't really feel the exhaustion until I waited in line for this ride. Waiting in line for Mario Kart, which in total was about an hour and a half, was extremely draining. There were a lot of times where I was kind of leaned up against the wall, or maybe I even sat down for a second, and I could just feel the weight of my body and my eyelids feel like they were going to shut on their own. It was the first time that I truly felt like I was exhausted, and it kind of scared me because I was only about halfway through the day, I think, around that. So I kind of made it a goal while I was in the ride to try not to get too comfortable, to try to stay on my feet. I was on my phone quite a bit, trying to stay engaged and not kind of let my mind die off too much. After I got off the ride though, I definitely knew that I needed to pick me up. So I ran back to Harry Potter and grabbed some butterbeer, which if you've never had it, it's not alcoholic. It's more of like a slushy ice cream drink. I like the frozen version, and it is super, super good. I ended up getting a few of these while I was there. All very good, by the way. With Mario Kart successfully conquered, I decided to go back to Donkey Kong. But oh wait, I couldn't. I looked on the app and Donkey Kong was down. Also, I feel I must mention, it was down ever since I got there that morning. Honestly, I had lost hope that it would open. And another thing I should point out, the Ministry didn't open back up either. It was still down at this time. This was really disheartening to me, because two of the rides I wanted to ride the most were Donkey Kong and Battle at the Ministry. I would be super bummed if I didn't get to ride these two things before I had to leave. But I still had to get some stuff done. So I headed back over to Dark Universe and rode Curse of the Werewolf. Curse of the Werewolf is kind of a strange case. It's easily the most hated ride at Epic Universe, at least online. Most comments you see about it are about how awful and terrible it is. But after riding it, I can say it's good. I mean, there's not really a bad ride at Epic. I see why people might have been disappointed in this, but I think it serves its purpose. I think this land kind of needed something like this, a little thrill, another attraction to kind of take some of the heat away from monsters, and for that reason I think Curse of the Werewolf serves a good purpose. I understand the criticisms that it's kind of an eyesore on the land, because you see this netted track just kind of in the corner of this otherwise beautiful area. But I mean, I don't think it just destroys the way this land looks. I mean, it is kind of tucked away. And you know, I think the ride is fun enough that I think it's worth it. I know that I might be in the minority, at least here online, but I think the ride is pretty fun. Now, obviously, don't wait over an hour for this thing. That is insane. Wait for it to go to 30 minutes or less, which it will get to, trust me, and just ride it then. After Curse of the Werewolf, my feet started to hurt pretty bad, so I decided to sit down in kind of that main area of Dark Universe and just kind of give my feet a break for a second, and also I could just soak in the atmosphere because it is a pretty cool area. And while I was sitting down, I just felt like passing out. I remember kind of thinking in my brain, like, if I lay down on this bench and just kind of sleep for a couple minutes, is anyone gonna try to wake me up or kick me out or something? I didn't do it, but I was tempted. I was just really exhausted. I don't think I really anticipated to be this tired on this trip. Now, whenever I was up and moving, it was fine. But anytime I took a second or two to sit down and kind of recharge, it was like you put 80 pounds on my shoulders and I just wanted to collapse and sleep. But because of this, I decided I cannot rest. I have to keep moving, I have to stay on my feet, because anytime that I am sitting down idle, I'm like about to pass out. So I got up and I decided to go back to Nintendo World to ride Yoshi. I rode Yoshi. There's really not a ton to say about it, really. If you're familiar with the People Mover at Disney World, it's kinda like that, but it's in Nintendo World. It's fine. This is definitely like a little baby ride. But I knew that going in, so I wasn't really disappointed. It actually went slower than I thought it would. There's also a little gameplay element to it, but it's not engaging at all, really. This is definitely for little kids. But for me, it gave me a cool vantage point of the land, and seeing all of Nintendo World from that perspective was actually pretty cool. But definitely don't wait more than like 5 to 10 minutes for this ride. This is not something you should be spending a large amount of time on. This is like a cool supplemental experience, but I saw this ride get to over 40 minutes at points during the day, and that is just absurd. Absolutely not. So at this point, I had ridden everything I wanted to ride except for Donkey Kong and Battle of the Ministry. I went back to Stardust and rode it again just because the single rider line for that ride is a cheat code. You walk straight on it. It's wild. But those two rides were still closed. I mean, what else am I supposed to do? So I decided I would go catch a show. There was one show I had heard a lot about before coming to Epic. It was called The Untrainable Dragon. I don't know a lot about the show except for kind of its one big trick I was aware of, which I won't spoil in case you haven't heard about it yet. But I wanted to see it in action even though I had gotten it spoiled for me online. And I was waiting in line for the next show, and I looked down at my phone and saw where the Donkey Kong ride had just reopened. The wait time was exploding as I was looking at it on the app, so I got out of line for the show and ran over to Donkey Kong. Whenever I got to Donkey Kong Country, I went straight back to the ride as quickly as I could, but there were several times I had to stop and gawk at just how wonderful that area is. It's just so alive, and it just feels like Donkey Kong. That's another one of my favorite areas. Now, I do think that walking into it isn't as impactful as that initial entrance into Nintendo World, but it's still pretty good, and the area itself lives up to the rest of Nintendo World. Like, it's wonderful in there. So I went back to the Donkey Kong minecart ride, and this was my longest wait of the entire trip. So there was a single rider line, and that was kind of what I was hoping to get into so that I could skip the longer wait. But when I tried to get in line for it, they said, nope, it's closed, you gotta go into the regular line. So I got into the normal line, which at the time said the wait was like 90 minutes or something. But after I was in line and well into the queue, I looked down at my phone to check, and the posted wait time was like over 2 hours. That was quite a bit, but I didn't get out of line because I thought, well, this is one of the 2 rides that I want to hit before I leave here, so I might as well wait it. I got time. So I stayed in line for, I think in total, nearly 2.5 hours. This ride's capacity is not very good. It loads really slow, it takes off really slow, can't hold a lot of riders. But with all that being said, I do think this is actually a really good ride, which is kind of frustrating in a way because it just has so much about it that could be improved. But I do think the experience that's there is pretty intriguing. This is also one of those rides that is really controversial. People love it or hate it. Most of the people that hate it say it's too rough and the wait times for it are way too long. And to that I say, yes, you are correct. But I think that what the ride does right is so good that it overshadows those things which over time will either get better or just in general aren't that big of a deal. Like, the animatronics in this ride are awesome, and the ride layout is way more engaging than I thought it would be. I thought this would be some like really kiddie coaster, but it's got some pretty fun parts in it that I thought were good. Now, it's totally fair if this isn't your favorite ride or anything. It probably won't be in your top 3, but I thought it was pretty fun. So I had ridden Donkey Kong, something that I didn't think I was going to be able to do. And then it kind of crept into my mind again. Crap, the Ministry. The last big ride that I wanted to ride, and I still hadn't got on it yet. I looked down at my phone, and guess what? It opened for the first time since this morning. But guess what the wait time was? Over 3 hours. I decided to make my way over there. I didn't really know if I was going to wait in it or not, but I knew they had a single rider line, so I thought, hey, maybe I can hop in there and they'll squeeze me in. But I got back there and they had actually cut off the line, saying that it exceeded the time that the park was going to be open, so they couldn't let anyone else in the line. Also, single rider was closed, and the Fast Pass line was at capacity, which is just wild. This was really disappointing because kind of the whole reason that I went to Epic was to ride all of these really big, fancy new attractions. And this is one of the ones people argue is the best. But I have to be honest with you guys, and I didn't get to ride it. It really sucks. It bums me out. I was looking forward to doing a tier list of all these rides, but I don't really feel comfortable doing that right now, especially with me having not ridden the Ministry. And I'm still avoiding spoilers, so I don't even know what that ride is. I just know it's cool, but I haven't got on it. So I guess that was kind of the biggest disappointment of the trip. But it didn't ruin my trip. I mean, I rode everything else, and everything I rode was really good. It was just kind of a bummer that was kind of the nail in the coffin of, guess what, buddy? You're not gonna get to ride this thing. So you know what I did, right? I went back and I rode Hiccups because Hiccups was awesome, and I rode it again. And then I went back and I rode Monsters Unchained again, which was awesome. And then I went back and I rode Stardust again, this time at night. And the night package on Stardust Racers is awesome. It's got these lights on it that make it really look like these comets are kind of fighting each other. And it's just a really fun thing to watch, but it makes the ride like way better. I didn't get to ride the Ministry, so I can't say for a fact, but I highly doubt that it is going to prevail over Stardust. After I got off of Stardust, I was feeling pretty good about my day, and I decided to eat something and then go home. So I headed over to the Toadstool Cafe, and I got this Mario burger and question block tiramisu, both of which were really good. While I was sitting down in the Toadstool Cafe, surrounded by that awesome theming and eating, I just couldn't believe how good of a day I actually got. Not gonna lie, I was kind of concerned. My Uber driver on the way to the hotel said that Epic is just constantly crowded, saying that everyone is trying to get in and do the new thing. He was nervous for me, saying if I didn't have FastPass, I probably wasn't going to have a very good day. But I actually got to ride everything. And if the Ministry hadn't went down when it did, I would have gotten to ride everything I wanted to. But with theme parks, you have to expect for things to go wrong. And I'm just gonna say it, way less things went wrong than what I thought would. I had a really good time at Epic, and just eating that meal was the perfect bow on top of the present. And kind of to answer that question that I put at the beginning of the video, can I do Epic on almost no sleep? The answer was absolutely yes. There were moments when I got really, really exhausted, even here at the Toadstool Cafe close to closing, but for most of the time, I felt pretty good. Now on repeat visits, would I be able to do this? I don't know. Most of what was really driving me was the excitement of getting to see all this stuff for the first time and experience it. With really the biggest drain was sitting down and relaxing and going idle. But next time, whenever I'm kind of aware of everything that's going on, maybe I won't be as eager, and maybe it would have been harder later. But as for my first trip, it was easy. The sleep really didn't have a ton of effect on me, but I will admit, when I was sitting here eating my burger, all I could think about was going to bed. It was really close to closing, not quite closing, it was like, I don't know, less than an hour out. But I decided to do a little bit of shopping and then go home. So I went over to the Nintendo World store and I got some merch. By the way, they have some crazy good merch. If you're there and you're a Nintendo fan, check it out. And then I made my way back, went to the bus, went back to the hotel, and went to bed because that weekend I was gonna go to Horror Nights. So overall, my trip to Epic went really good. I really enjoyed Epic Universe. I think it definitely lived up to the hype, and it's something you can totally do without having a lot of sleep, especially if it's your first time. Now I know that depends on person to person, but for me, not too bad. It was definitely worth the really cheap flight that I got for flying out that early, and I think that my trip overall was a huge success. Now yes, the rest of the trip, I was still very tired, but I made it, and I had fun. So, there's 2 thumbs up for me. It was good. You can do it too. You should try it. Also, if you liked stuff like this, you should check out the channel. Maybe after I get another shot at Epic Universe, I can go back and actually give it a ranking like I did for Universal and Islands of Adventure already, and check that video out if you haven't yet. We have a couple other theme park videos here on the channel. You should definitely go and check those out. I plan to do more in the future. It's just a big guess hobby's not really the right word. It's like it's a big interest of mine, and I plan to go to a lot more. So just stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys for going with me on this journey, and I will see you all next time. Take care.